Welcome back to the Mental Playbook Podcast. I'm here with Janae Loganbill, performance coach and founder of G-Fit Performance Training. Hi, Coach G. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. So I want to know what first sparked your passion in sports and performance training.
Okay. I played sports my whole life. In high school, I did volleyball, basketball, and track. And then I went to Oklahoma State University and ran track there. And then I think throughout college, I just realized I didn't want to ever stop being an athlete. So I ended up getting into just regular personal training on campus, training students and faculty. And then I shadowed and worked with the Oklahoma State strength and conditioning staff, working with some of the teams. And from there, I just knew I wanted to stay in the weight room and get to wear a t-shirt every day and not be sitting at a desk. So it's kind
Yeah,
of how it started.
I like that. You played a lot of sports. Can you share how your experience as a multi-sport athlete shaped the coach you are today?
I think it helps a lot because most of my clientele is volleyball. And I think as a coach, if you've actually played the sport, you're able to relate a lot more because you know how it feels,
Yeah.
you know what you need. So being able to relate directly to, okay, I actually played this, I know what I wish I would have done and what I did do that worked well. So I feel like athletes also respect that more, like, okay, you've been in my shoes, so I can trust your word a little bit more.
Yeah, you can see both sides of the field or court. What
Yeah.
what inspired you to start G-Fit performance training and what was like the goal and mission behind it?
Okay. So originally my dream was to work with professional athletes, and I got really lucky. Right out of college, I got a job doing that. I was working with NFL players and a little bit of NBA. But through that, I realized that I actually liked the high school population a lot more. Professional athletes, they already made it to the pros, so they're
Yeah.
pretty set with what they do. High school athletes, like, you get to really build them up and work on that foundation. So I ended up leaving that job and starting GFIT. And the only goal I really had was to work with high school teams, athletes. And honestly, I never set out to be an entrepreneur or have a business. So I can't even say there was like this big grand goal in mind. I just knew I wanted to make a living training teenage and college level athletes.
Yeah, that's really cool. So what are some key components that go into an effective performance training program, especially for those younger athletes?
I think first and foremost, just creating a strong base. I have athletes anywhere from the age of like 8 or 9 up to 22, and mainly probably closer to like 14, 15, the high school age. But a lot of times they come in and they don't know how to properly squat, or they don't know how to run correctly or land after they jump. So just breaking down that base and showing them this is how the movement should look, this is how it should feel, that just makes a big difference in and of itself, because a lot of athletes have a lot of knee pain or hip pain or ankle pain, and just showing them how to do things properly changes a lot. And then from there, focusing on whatever sport they're in and talking to them about what they feel like they need. Do you feel like you're slow? Do you feel like you don't jump high enough? And then just building a program based around that.
Yeah. So what role does injury prevention play in the way you coach athletes?
So I actually had 3 surgeries in 2 years, starting at the age of 18.
Oh.
So I'm really big into injury prevention because most of my issues were just from overuse and lack of education. So I'm really big into that. I don't ever move athletes past a certain phase, whether it's lifting heavier or moving in a more complex way, until they've perfected the basics. And that is basically the injury prevention that I do with everyone, no matter their level. And making sure there's also balances. Like, a lot of athletes are very quad dominant. So making sure that their hips and glutes and hamstrings are equally as strong as their quads, so that we're not having any imbalances, or making sure the right and left leg are equally strong, things like that.
Yeah. I'm curious to know what kind of impact do you think negative environments and coaches can have on young athletes?
As far as mentally, I feel like coaches focus so much on criticism and
Mm.
always saying, like, what you're doing wrong, you're too slow, you're not listening, whatever it is. And I think athletes nowadays, they need a lot more feedback. And it doesn't have to be, you're doing a great job, and really cringy, corny feedback. It can just be, look, you're moving too slow, and here's how you can move faster. I don't think there's enough actual feedback of how to improve. It's just so much criticism, and I think the issue with that is that the criticism gets in their heads, and so then they think, oh, I'm just too slow, I'm not good enough, this is who I am, versus, oh, I can actually improve, and here are the steps I can take to do that. So I think that as far as the mental aspect, and then I think physically, coaches and parents, I think, are an issue too. Athletes are just doing way too much. Like when I was in high school, I got to play 3 sports. Nowadays, I don't feel like you really can because everyone requires year-round everything. So I have athletes that will have 2 practices in one day, 2 lifting sessions, and they're not getting enough sleep. They're not getting enough recovery. They're not valuing nutrition. So I think coaches and parents could be a lot better about like slowing down and understanding that more isn't always better. And that would make a big difference in how athletes feel physically and mentally.
Yeah, and coaches and parents have a big impact. So if they're putting a lot of pressure on the athlete, it can really affect them, especially at a young age. So I think what
Mm-hmm.
you said, guidance is really important.
For sure.
What are some signs that an athlete might be mentally struggling, even if they seem physically fine?
I think the biggest thing I see is I do try to give a lot of constructive feedback, but I still have athletes that hear something negative, like, oh, I'm not doing it right. And you can just see their body language shift and, drop their head, drop their shoulders, or just get really frustrated. And I think that stems from their own internal confidence and probably, how coaches and parents have impacted them. And
Yeah.
they're so used to like, oh, if I'm doing something wrong, then that means I suck. So I think it's very visible, at least for me, because I look for it. As far as mainly just body language, like they might be the funny guy on the team and really upbeat with their teammates, but you can kind of see just how they carry themselves and in their eyes, how they're actually struggling outside of that.
Yeah. And how can they seek help, and what resources do you suggest they use if it becomes a bigger problem?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think first and foremost, it's important for every athlete to have a mentor, whether that's a coach or a parent or a sibling, even a best friend, just having someone that they feel really comfortable being completely honest with. I think a lot of times athletes just they want to put on this front and they don't feel comfortable saying like, "Hey, I'm struggling with this." So just having one person to go to that you're comfortable with, and then hopefully that person can be a good resource to bring you, to someone like me, or if you need to see a sports psychologist type of thing. Just having those relationships, I think, is really important.
Yeah. And going back to the feedback, especially when it's good, constructive feedback, sometimes we can take it personally. I know I take it a little personally. So do you have
Yeah.
any suggestions on how we can kind of make a boundary and not let it affect us?
Mm-hmm. I think that just taking it personally, I think we all kind of do that, especially in this day and age. And I try to tell my athletes, like, look, you are 14, 15, 16, even 18 years old. You're not supposed to be perfect at this.
Yeah.
And no teenager is. So take this and use it to get better versus being upset that you're not perfect and you're not doing everything perfect. No one is. I think we get really confused about that because of what we see on social media and seeing these constant highlight reels or, seeing some like 14-year-old superstar on the other side of the country. We forget that everyone has this stuff. We're just not seeing it. So just knowing like this isn't personal, and I'm also being told this because this person believes that I can do better. So let me have that belief in myself that I can do better and just push myself in that direction.
Yeah. There is so much comparison. We only see like the highlight reels and all of that. So that's definitely a huge issue now.
Yeah.
So what led you to start GFit Mental Performance, and how has it changed your approach to coaching?
So I think I started noticing mainly during COVID just the effect that was having on athletes, just the unknown of everything. At that time, I was doing all my workouts like either at the beach or in fields and parks that we didn't even know if there was going to be seasons. We didn't know what anything looked like, and I think that uncertainty, as well as like kids aren't even going to school. They're at home all day every day. They're not seeing their friends. I think that took a really big toll mentally. And that's when I realized like kids are so much more than just athletes. They have a lot going on. And, I was in school, I graduated in 2011, and things have changed a lot even since then. I don't feel like I had the pressures of social media on me the way that kids do, and the pressure of even coaches and parents that kids have nowadays. So I really wanted to focus on that and help kids feel better, not just as athletes, but as human beings. Because I also realized only 7% of high school athletes actually play college sports, and only 2% actually go Division One. So it's such a small number, and I wanted to make an impact on them beyond just their career as an athlete, but something that they can actually grow and learn from and keep building on into adulthood and beyond.
Yeah, exactly. What are
Mm-hmm.
some mental challenges athletes often face, and how do you help them work through those?
I think comparison is a big one, for sure. We kind of touched on that a little bit. And I think just having a chronically negative outlook on themselves. Like I have athletes that after a game, they're just thinking about, this shot that they missed or this one play that they got on beat on defense, but they're not recognizing, I had 5 assists or I had, 2 steals. They're not thinking about anything positive. They're just honing in on the negative, even if no one else is. They do that to themselves a little bit.
Yeah.
So I try to encourage, like, look at both sides. Like, let yourself, acknowledge what you've done well and let yourself be proud of that. You can still look at the negative and think about how I can improve it. But I think that we're shifting just way too much to that
Yeah.
and not giving ourselves enough credit for what we are doing. Or even just, this game was better than the game I played last week. Just seeing those little tiny improvements and giving ourselves credit for them.
Yeah. What are some simple strategies we can all do to build both physical and mental resilience in our everyday lives?
One, I think just acknowledging it. I think sitting with ourselves and thinking about like how we're actually feeling and then steps we can take to either continue feeling that way if we're feeling great or taking steps to get out of it. I think having a routine is really important. That's something I talk about with my athletes in mental performance, like coming up with a pregame routine that no matter what the game is, no matter who you're playing, no matter how serious it is, this is our routine. That way there's not as much unpredictability, and you can kind of just like go through your steps and feel a little bit more relaxed and feel more prepared because you've done it so many times.
Yeah. So you work with a lot of youth down in SoCal. What's one lesson you hope every athlete walks away with after training with you?
Hmm. I think the biggest thing I want my athletes to do is have fun. Like when we're training, I'm not the trainer that's like, this is all serious.
Mhm.
We're just here to work. A lot of my sessions are group sessions, and we play music. We have a good time, and I want athletes to know that you can get better and improve and reach your goals, but also have a good time doing it. It doesn't have to be this serious, hardcore journey. I think that a lot of parents and coaches want them to feel that way, but I think that life just feels better when you're actually enjoying the process and,
Yeah.
you know, having a good time. So that's something I don't feel like a lot of other coaches in this field push. So just having a good time and enjoying your athletic career because it goes by really quickly.
Yeah. And even what you said about the numbers of, playing sports in college and D1, it's very
Mm-hmm.
competitive. It's hard to even maybe have that as a goal when there's a lot of, you know, a big pool of athletes. So that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
How do you encourage athletes to set goals that support both their mental and physical health?
I think first and foremost is setting really small goals. I think most of my athletes, I want to play in college or, I want to get to this level. And they're setting this goal as like a freshman or a sophomore, which is great. And I'm all for it. But I think there has to be really small steps in between that feel attainable versus just going from a sophomore athlete to some Division I athlete. So I try to encourage them to make a goal every single week that's attainable, that's bringing them closer to their, overall goal. So whether it's, scoring this many points in the next game or putting in an extra 2 hours of work on their own, working on, ball handling or something that they feel like they need to improve on, just something attainable that doesn't feel super overwhelming. I think if you just continue to do that, and then a year later you look up and you can see all the progress that you've made.
Yeah. So there's like team sports and then more individual sports. What lessons from specifically team sports do you believe are most important in life outside the game?
So I think ultimately just knowing how to work with other people. I think a lot of athletes have egos about themselves nowadays that it's all about me and what I get and my goals, and I'm putting me first instead of seeing the bigger picture of their teammates. And there's just statistical proof that teams that actually like each other and enjoy each other's company actually play better together and win more, which is everyone's goal to win. So I try to talk to my kids about that a lot, that, you know, you might not like certain teammates, you might not get along, you might not see eye to eye, but it's still really important to know how to work with each other and to be respectful and to know how to talk to each other through conflict, because you're going to have to deal with that throughout your life no matter what, whether it's in work, if you have a coworker that you don't like, or a boss that bothers you, or you have a family that's tough to deal with. There's just going to be conflict with other people in life. So learning at a young age how to work through conflict in a respectful manner is going to help way beyond sports.
Yeah. And what are some ways you instill building those relationships within the team?
I think it's important to get to know each other outside of that sport. I think a lot of times they only spend time together in practice and in games, and they don't really know anything about each other's lives. Sorry. And I think if you spend time just learning about, you know, what are their other interests, or what is their background, or what's a challenge that they've had to deal with in life, it just makes them look a little bit more human to you than just being your teammate, especially the players that, you know, we think are just superstars and haven't had to work very hard. I think it can be really humbling for other teammates to learn, like, oh, well, they've actually had to work really hard, or they've actually had to struggle a lot with this, and they're not this perfect person. So let me have a little bit more empathy and respect for their journey too.
Yeah. So with the work that you do, what is your mental playbook that keeps you going?
I think two things. So, number one is having a routine. I'm a very routine person. My morning routine, my workout routine, how I go to work, I think it just puts me in a mental state to be able to take the load that I have of seeing lots of different athletes every day and having the energy and upbeatness that I need to have during my job, and being really present with each group, making sure that, you know, I'm there with them. I'm not thinking about other life things.
Right.
And then aside from that, also just having time for myself. So like on weekends, not thinking about work, not doing any work, completely separating it, and just, you know, resetting myself. And I think that brings me back on Monday to do a much better job than if I was constantly focused on work in my business.
Yeah. And I'm curious because sometimes we make what we do like our identity, especially sports. So I'm wondering how you encourage your athletes to kind of not let their sport be who they are, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think I've struggled with that for sure. I think that's originally why I even got in this career path, because I couldn't fathom not being an athlete. But that's part of what mental performance is about. It's separating your performance and your success or not success in what you do away from you as a human being. They're two separate things. You can love that you're an athlete and, you know, really dive into that identity, but I think having interests outside of that,
Yeah.
also having relationships. I think relationships are so important with family, with friends who they don't care how well you play. They don't care if you go D1 or you don't play at all. They love you for who you are. I think that helps a lot too. And getting, you know, time spent with people who aren't always talking about your sport, who are interested in how you're doing as a human or other things that you're interested in too.
Yeah, I like that. So if you could go back and give advice to your younger athlete self, what would it be?
My biggest thing for myself would have been one, to just understand the importance of rest and recovery and nutrition, because I don't think I did any of that. I think I could have been a much better athlete if I did. And then I think also just really believing in myself instead of believing what other people told me about myself, coaches, teammates, family. I feel like we let other people's projections become our beliefs.
Right.
I think it's really important to, we know ourselves better than anyone else does. So sticking to our own beliefs about other people project what they think that we can do.
Yeah. So my last question for you is what matters most to you, the destination, the journey, or the company?
Definitely the company for me. I think the destination never ends up being what you think it's going to be anyway. So I think that's probably the least important. And then I think the journey, the company that you have on the journey either makes or breaks it. So I think the company for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Coach G, for joining me. To my listeners, mind strong, game on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.